Now everybody knows the importance of getting feedback after your events. Most people will tend to use HubSpot Forms when they're managing their events inside of HubSpot, and that's a no-no. Same thing with using the survey. It's not a good thing because it doesn't tile it back to the event. What happens if a contact fills out a feedback survey, then fills out another one? If you're using a HubSpot form and that previous data is going to be overwritten, you could never see and track how someone is doing or how someone feels about all the events they're attending. But when you event happily, you've got everything that you need using registrant-based forms. Let's jump right into a registrant-based form. What we're looking at right now is an event satisfaction property that's on our happily registrant. The registrant is an instance of a contact going to an event. So a contact can have one or many registrants, one for each event. Now, what we're doing here is we have an event satisfaction that is a drop down that says very satisfied all the way to very dissatisfied because the whole place smelled like feet. It was a problem. Now, what's important here is how do you identify who actually filled this out? If I don't have an email, I don't have a name, I don't have anything. Because watch what happens. I'm going to jump to a form. I'm going to fill out this. I'm going to say very satisfied. You'll see this record ID for forms. It'll come in really important later. If I hit submit, what happens? Where does that data go if you just filled this random form out that didn't even have a contact property on it? Well, if you look at our form and look at our submissions, what happened here? No contact record because there's no contact properties. But if you want to view it, there was a problem of creating or updating this record. Did it just create a phantom registrant record with nothing in it? It did not, especially because our registrant record requires the registrant name. So how do you solve for this? How do you send everybody a unique form that knows to go to their registrant object with their feedback surveys? And that's where this magical property of the record ID for forms comes into play. Now, hat tip for HubSpot. For regular properties like a contact, HubSpot uses the email as the unique identifier. But what does it use for other objects? Well, for the company, it actually uses the domain name. But for everything else, especially custom objects, it's going to use not only the record ID, but any property that is a unique value that has a number in it will represent that unique identifier. Let's take a look at the record ID for forms property. Now, when we look at the field type, it is, of course, an unformatted number, but it requires unique values for that property. And what's a unique value on an object that already has the record ID? When we create a registrant, what we want to do is we want to fill out this record ID for forms with the record ID of the registrant that was created. And you could do that with our workflow that always fires when a new registrant is created. The first thing we do is we copy the record ID into that record ID for forms. You're probably asking, Dax, why don't you just use the record ID? Well, can you use the record ID on a form? HubSpot does not allow you to have the record ID property of any object on a form. It makes sense. So we have to copy that onto its own unique property that requires unique values. And that's what's going to tie that to a specific registrant. Now, the next question always is, no one that's filling out their surveys is going to know what their record ID is. And you're right, they won't. That's why you want to make sure that you automatically populate that property on the HubSpot form. We're going to use query parameters to automatically populate form fields. So we look at this record ID for forms. What you could do in the URL is add a query. So the question mark, type the API name of this particular field, record ID _for forms equals, we're going to put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? You could add another property if you were going to autofill email, autofill name by doing the ampersand and then doing another field and a value. But let's hit enter and see what happens. Wow. Automatically populates that value. Now what we want to do is we want to set this URL onto the registrant object so that after an event, potentially their status gets changed to attending, you can send out an email that has a link to their own unique form. The way we do that is in that same registrant created workflow, we're going to set our post-event server URL, which is a property on the registrant that we installed because we know that this is the way to do things. We're going to set it to that share form link and then add our query parameter, record ID for forms, and we're going to set to the record ID. So every time a registrant is created, they're going to get a unique URL that will live in this property that will link them to the correct registrant-based form. So when someone fills that form out, HubSpot knows to populate all the questions that you ask that are registrant-based properties to fill out that particular registrant object. It won't just get orphaned and live in the ether and go nowhere. Let's show an example. So we've got this event, the Green Hill 5K, that Sonic has registered for. If I look at Sonic's registrant object, I'll be able to look and see that he has a specific URL for the survey for his event. So if I do all properties and just search survey, I can see that he's got his own unique survey URL that has his specific registrant record ID appended to it for the record ID for forms. What does that mean? After he attends the Green Hill 5K, he clearly is going to win. He'll visit this URL. Now, the key is you want to make this a hidden property on your survey so that it's not shown here, because it's obviously you don't want people to like type it in or, edit it or anything like that. But it still will operate the same, even though it's a hidden property. He's going to select somewhat satisfied. Nah, he was very satisfied. Come on. And we submit. Now, when we go back to that specific registered record, we could type in satisfaction and you could see that it was very satisfied from the general feedback form. So with that, now you can have all the different registrant properties set up for the survey that you want to send, create a unique link by taking that share form URL and appending the record ID for forms and setting that in the workflow as we've seen here, so that every single registrant will get their own unique survey form for the given event. They'll fill it out. And now in a subsequent video, I'll show you how you can report on this directly on the event itself. You will be able to see all the associated registrants and their feedback survey information all in one place. You can report on it at the contact level to see all the feedback that a certain contact is given over the lifetime of event attendance, or look at a single event and see how you did. That's just another way you can event happen.